Welcome, everybody, to the Weekly Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Fabry, with my co-host, IFBB Pro, Dr. Todd Lee. Todd, welcome back.
Hello.
All right. And you pay the bills. So, as always, Weekly Grind Podcast sponsored by Valhalla Labs and Valhalla-Labs.com and by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel at KodiakBodybuilding.com, where shipping is always free. And with us tonight, Todd, we have IFBB Pro, Chris Tuttle. Chris, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great, man. Glad to have you on.
Excited.
I know Todd's really excited because he's a medical doctor, so this is great for him. He's deep into Nerdville with this one.
Awesome. So, I think,
all right,
Chris, your mic might be a little hot because it's giving us feedback on Keith. Can you turn your mic down a little bit?
I don't even know how to do that.
I can't tell. Is that good there?
I didn't hear any feedback that time, so it probably is. Chris, you probably fixed it.
Yeah, I just got to turn the volume down a little bit.
And when I speak, it's okay?
It's super loud. That's why I figured it was you.
Yeah, it's
which is fine. We want to hear what you have to say. We don't give a fuck what you have to say.
Nobody needs to hear us.
I'll make sure I yell. All right?
All right.
So, Chris, for those of you who don't know, Chris is, if I'm not mistaken, a clinical dietitian and a contest prep coach who helps both people in the hospital and get on stage with incredible diets with a focus on micronutrients. Is that a correct statement?
Close. So I'm a registered dietitian. That's what it's called, where it's you're nationally recognized to practice nutrition in whatever state when you have that recognition as an RD. You have to take a national exam. I used to work in the hospital as a clinical dietitian, working at various floors, whether it's oncology, GI, cardiac unit, or ICU. And now personally, I just work from home, contest prep, general weight loss, a lot of nutrition-related disease. Believe it or not, I do a lot of diets for people who have digestive issues, and I actually do quite a few diets for people who try to make their life insurance. Because as you guys know, when you get your life insurance and your liver enzymes are off or your creatinine or BUN's off, you are blacklisted. You're done. So some people come to me and they need to take their HDLs are a little low, LDLs a little high. And they're like, hey, I got 3 weeks to get this fixed or else I won't be able to get insured. And I help them in that period of time make those changes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's safe to say that you have a lot more like general people than like contest prep people?
Yes. I actually have a lot of clients. My contest prep clients, obviously, as you guys know, they're very time consuming. So it's not like you can have 100 people,
Right.
So I keep those to a minimum. But my main clientele is nutrition-related disease, and of course weight loss.
Right. Which we both do the same. We both have weight loss clients as well as contest prep, and that seems to be the norm as you get more of those than you do the contest prep.
So there's some basic overview questions I wanted to just throw out there, and we can address them at any point. I know Keith has a ton of questions, but I wanted to get the ball rolling at least. Get them out there in case we don't forget them later. Is you brought up creatinine, BUN. Basically, I want to talk about your opinion about whether elevated creatinine in contest prep bodybuilders or off-season bodybuilders is truly indicative of GFR, kidney disease. I also wanted to discuss what you thought about ALT, AST. I wanted your opinion about certain types of gear and whether they're more toxic than others. And of course, you don't have to answer any of these. And then I really wanted to get into probiotics and micronutrients and how you think the most efficient way of using whole foods to meet those requirements, both pre-contest and off-season, would be. Those are my big questions, and we can address those in any order you want.
Oh, that's super easy. I'll start with the kidney stuff. So first and foremost, everybody who's listening needs to understand that the biggest indicator of kidney health, renal health, or monitoring it is monitoring your numbers over a duration of time. If you've never checked your BUN, your creatinine, or EGFR, and you go get it checked and it's slightly out of whack, you don't know if that's your norm. You don't know if you're dehydrated that day. There's a lot of things you need to rule out. So that being said, regularly doing those numbers, at least in my opinion, if you're a bodybuilder, 4 times a year, and comparing those numbers every year to make sure there's not a consistent decline. If there is, you have a problem. Now, diagnosing what that problem might be, it's most likely probably related to blood pressure or slightly elevated blood pressure that's not technically treatable by your doctor. You're probably like right borderline. But if you're constantly slightly hypertensive consistently for years, you're going to pay a toll on your kidneys. And obviously, that comes into role with gear causing increased blood pressure or your increased body weight. Because obviously, as many of you guys might know, and you guys see it in yourselves, you might be slightly hypertensive in the off season, running moderate gear, and you have heavy body weight, and all of a sudden contest prep, you lose 30 pounds, you run tons of gear, and you have normal blood pressure. In that case, obviously, it's more related to body weight.
Right.
But obviously, that's not always the case with everybody. You know, you have genetics to play a role and so forth. But the thing about creatinine BUN, outside of it trending up over time and outside it being really high, so I mean, no way, shape, or form should creatinine be a 3, okay, or a 2.4, and just shake it off like it's nothing or it's related to muscle mass. As a bodybuilder, obviously, we have more muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your creatinine levels will be. That's fact. Now, that doesn't mean you walk around at 2.2 creatinine levels and your BUN to 30 and you're just like, oh, just because of my muscle mass. That might not necessarily be true. You need to look further into that with your doctor. But in general, creatinine is higher with more muscle mass because we have more turnover, we have more muscle breakdown, therefore the number is going to be higher. BUN sometimes can be funny, and they're both really affected by hydration. So if you go in for labs in the morning, and as bodybuilders, as you guys know, we fluctuate sometimes 6 to 10 pounds from night to morning because we're eating so much food, drinking so much water. So we diurese through the night, and you wake up, and you're generally on the dehydrated side. You go in to get those labs done, and you check them without drinking any water or coffee. I know it's technically fasting, but you're in a dehydrated state. Those numbers might be falsely elevated, and you're not going to get an accurate number, which I'll discuss that in a second. But generally, I've seen a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of my clients with BUN creatinine slightly elevated. You know, sometimes BUN's slightly elevated and creatinine is normal. Most cases, it's high end of normal, and BUN is slightly elevated, which is nothing to worry about, provided there's not a trend. And then EGFR, obviously, in people that can change all the time. Like if you check it every day for 6 days, you're going to get a slightly different number sometimes. Again, that's also a trend, but I mean, nobody should be walking around with the EGFR of 40 or 50. Especially at our age. You know, if you're 55, 60 and your EGFR is 50 and it's been around there, that's normal renal decline as we age because that does occur. I've tested, I'm a little of a fanatic. I like to learn and understand the body. I've legitimately got my blood work done, I kid you not, maybe 47 times in 5 years. I get it done throughout prep. Sometimes I'll do a trial diet. Sometimes I'll do a hydration diet where I'll hydrate a lot and then check it and then bring my water down 50% and go check it just to see how much it actually will change. I've checked my CK levels, my AST and ALT directly after leg workout, and then I took 4 days off and then checked it again to see how much it would change. Right. So as far as kidney numbers, man, it's something not to mess around with. And if you have wacky numbers, it's really good to rule it out. Now, for those of you guys who are listening, if you want to get the most accurate reading, honestly, the best thing to do is to take 5 days off from training completely. Do not eat any red meat 2 days before you do a blood draw. Go in fasting in the morning and make sure you drink a liter of water before you go in. That way, because creatinine, red meat can give you a false high creatinine level. And it's totally false. So you want to have an accurate number of what's really going on if it's really elevated. And of course, the hydration. Be consistent with your hydration. I know some people in off season, you're eating so much food where you might be 2 liters one day, 1 liter, then 3 liters and 4 liters. So you're all over the place with hydration, and your body's trying to constantly compensate that fluid balance. So that's something to also keep in mind. And of course, training. That way you can get an accurate reading. So I can talk about this forever. What questions you got for that I said so far?
So actually, I've got an anecdote. So I have consistently for the past 12 years hit a 1.15 creatinine. I used to only get it tested in the off season. Never used to get it while I was on gear. Last year, Post show, I had some health complications. Went in, my AST, ALT were like 300, but it was also after a leg day. Came back a month later, had the full battery of tests done, and my blood work was pretty much perfect, even though I was on 1,000 DECA and 400 tren, zero test, 8 units of GH. But everything was perfect. HDL was perfect. Creatinine was 1.1. Everything was fine. So I'd never went in post-show, though. So this year, 5 days after the show, I got my blood work done, and I was running, I think, 200 tren a day going into the show. By the time 5 days after the show, I was on 100 DECA a day and 100 tren a day. And I had came in for blood work. They couldn't get any blood. I was too dehydrated. So I went, drank a bunch of fluid, ate a couple hundred carbs, did legs, drove across the street from the gym to the doctor's office. While I'm sweating, they did the blood work out of my legs, and my creatinine came back of a 1.3. Now, I assume that 1.3 is due to either the excessive amount of tren being used, the fact that I was post-show and still probably overworked, or it was because I had literally driven across the street from doing legs to get my blood work done. And I have not had it done since, because I'm assuming those three variables is what increased it from a 1.15 to a 1.3. Do you think that my assumption is within reason as accurate?
Your assumption that it was from training is 100% accurate.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's not. The thing, people don't understand that, like, I know it's a myth, and if somebody's listening who's got proof, by all means, I'm going to change their mind, but steroids aren't renal toxic. They're not.
Okay, good.
Unless they have some sort of heavy metal that's contaminated in there that's going to destroy your kidney. Like, tren is not renal toxic. It's just not. The muscle breakdown can cause it, and obviously, if you're taking gear and having high blood pressure chronically, that can damage your kidney and bring your creatinine up. Those are mechanisms of how bodybuilders are getting renal failure. They're not getting renal failure because of Anavar, because of Anadrol, or so forth. It's the muscle breakdown. And believe it or not, that creatinine level post-training, post-show, that's pretty good. You know, I've seen people's higher. I had one guy, and he has kids, and I said to him, flat out, I go, listen, man, you need to like pull out of the show, and you need to get this figured out, because I was unaware of your creatinine is like around 2.2, and your BON's like 31, EGFR is 55. He's an older guy. So long story short, multiple labs, went to the kidney doctor, and long story short, that's his norm. That's his baseline. He came off gear, dropped some body weight, checked it again, exactly the same. Stopped training, checked it again, exactly the same. That's just his baseline. Then his doctor pulled up blood work from about 8 years ago, and it's roughly the same.
Well, we should have done that first.
Right. It's hard to find labs from more like 20, you know?
Wow.
But, creatinine can be affected by that, and not as much. But AST and ALT can be falsely elevated. It makes it look like you have liver problems, but you don't. There's so many articles on that. And speaking of that, I'm about to do an accredited presentation for the American Dietetics Association on exactly that, where Olympic athletes, weight training, strenuous exercise can falsely reflect liver problems with elevated CK levels and AST and ALT, sometimes like 4 or 5 times what they're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes up to 7-fold exercise to bring them to normal in some people. Because I've had natural bodybuilders, man, and their blood work sometimes looks similar to ours, you know, and they're not touching anything.
I'm thinking 2005, there was a study on Olympic athletes. One of them was on protein and whey protein versus, like 1x, 2x, 3x, and 4x kilograms body weight, whether it's meat or whey, and how it affected them in blood work. And the other study was on AST, ALT, and they showed that Olympic athletes often had 700 or 7 times normal AST and ALT than normal athletes. And, everyone wants to ignore this, but it's not that I didn't know, but I knew that you would give me a very detailed, modern, educated opinion from your clinical experience. and your coaching experience on these topics. That's why I wanted to hear your take on it, because people know what I think, but they want to know what you think.
And there's the thing, guys, whoever listen to it's like your doctors might freak out and see it, and it's not your doctors are dumb. They don't know, they don't deal with our population. So when they see that in a normal human being, they're like, that could reflect a serious problem. But I always tell them before they go into the blood work, I'm like, dude, just bring them this printouts from PubMed, bring these studies and this literature from these reliable sources, and to show it to him so they don't freak out and have to order liver biopsy and they think they have hepatitis. No, you don't have hepatitis, and of course, don't train before and make the normal protocol so your labs will be more accurate the first time, so you're not going back 2 or 3 times.
Right.
It's key, very key. People don't know that. It's like you don't go out and eat a burger and fries the night before your blood work and train legs and then wake up in the morning and not drink a liter of water. It's like your triglycerides are going to be higher. Everything's going to be, different than it's supposed to be. I'd rather it just get in there, be one and done, and be like, all right, things are checking out. Compare them to the previous labs and the last year labs. Great. No decline, and then continue on. Genetically, there's also genetics in this. As you guys know, there's some people that can abuse the crap out of the body and have decent labs. I've had a client, he's a professional now, and after 1 year he did nationals, he got his blood work done 5 days after. Everything was normal, even HDL. And I go, what planet are you from? And he was taking Winstrol, he was taking multiple things, and his body just seemed to not react to it. Meanwhile, you have Joe Blow, who just takes 300 mgs a deca, and his blood pressure's through the roof. His HDL's a 2, and his LDL's 300. Right.
Yeah, I'm like that too. A lot of people will say that with EQ that blood pressure will raise with EQ, and they'll have high blood pressure readings with EQ, and it never bothers me. I can go in and it's like 120 over 65, and I'm running 600 milligrams of EQ with test.
Yeah, and not to mention a lot of bodybuilders, as much as we're willing to do what we do, most of us are little hypochondriacs. They go in, they see the doctor, they freak out, they get nervous, they get that white coat syndrome, and their blood pressure's high when they go in there. You just need to relax. Take your blood.
I've got a blood pressure cuff I got from Amazon for $30. I take it when I wake up in the morning before I get out of bed to pee, and it comes out about between 126 and 138 over between 76 and 85. If I go to the doctor and have even woman wearing a white coat that's not a doctor, but they just put the white coat on, white coat syndrome, so they can prescribe you pills, that it'll come out 165 over 100 or something like that.
Yeah. And sometimes they're using like an average cuff. You can't use an average cuff on a dude's arm who's 18 inches or more. Do you know what I mean? Right, it's not going to come out right. You always know who's experienced when they walk in and they grab a cuff, looks like it fits a child, and you're like, oh, it looks like you have a little high blood pressure. I'm like, can I see the doctor, please? This is silly.
Go get the one you put on somebody's leg. Put that on my arm. We'll be fine.
And I just want to touch on the CK levels. So
sure,
that can also be a marker. Like people at elevated CK levels might show that their heart is being damaged, right? Because it doesn't specify whether it's tissue for muscle or for heart. So I've had one client and myself have CK levels like in the 4,000s, right? And usually that's like major problem. And so he was a natural guy too, no drugs. He saw multiple doctors. Long story short, that's just how he runs. He didn't exercise for, I think, 10 days, went and got it checked at normal. Went out, exercised for a full week, went back to get a check again, back to 4,000 again. And he's not training 3 hours a day. He's just training like a normal. And for myself too, I did it. Like I told you guys, I went post-workout legs and I got it, and it was like 2,800. And then when I took a break and got it done again, it was down to 800. And I did the whole test, the specificity test on like cardiac tissue, and it was normal. So it was clearly related to muscle breakdown from us constantly training and being way more muscular than we're supposed to be for our height.
I believe it's CMB is specific for heart.
Correct. Yep.
If they order the right one, then they can. It takes the guesswork out of it. And I might be mistaken, but I think the reason why the AST, ALT get elevated from training is because they're aspartate transaminase and alanine transaminase, and they're used for amino acid transport in and out of cells. So they're located in muscle and they're also located in the liver. But as we all know, normal people don't exercise, or if they do exercise, it doesn't really register to the body as exercise. So they don't run out of glycogen and have to use amino acids for gluconeogenesis in the muscle. So therefore, you wouldn't have the leakage of those enzymes into the bloodstream.
Correct. And the thing, and like if your enzymes are under 100, you have nothing to worry about. I mean, if they're chronically over 100, you might want to look into it more and just rule that out, because that's not, I mean, exercise shouldn't make them chronically above 100, but just rule it out to be safe. I mean, at all the clients I've had in 10 years doing blood work, I haven't had anybody have hepatitis. I haven't had anybody have liver issues, fatty liver, or cirrhosis. So, I mean, it's always been related to exercise. Does it mean there's a possibility there could be, but you just want to make sure you're careful on that.
Well, a lot of, like Todd said too, a lot of it depends on how hard you train. You get a normal person that goes to the gym, that goes to Planet Fitness, and they're there for half an hour and 15 minutes, of his actual exercise, and then you get a bodybuilder who's in there for an hour, hour and a half, training to failure and working themselves, to the point where there's muscle breakdown. There's a big difference in the way those results are going to come back. Did we lose them? Oh,
no, you're good. Yeah, I glitched it for a second.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so like what you said, it's a big difference between a 150-pound kid training legs and a 250-pound male training legs. The amount of muscle tissue being broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greater. The questions, yeah. What was the next one there? You said we touched on the BUN, the creatinine. We touched on the ALT, ALT. Steroids are not real toxic unless you're obviously indirectly raising blood pressure.
Right. And do you feel the main mechanism that they increase blood pressure is through estrogen, or do you think they have a direct stimulation on the vascular muscle that surrounds capillaries and whatnot?
I don't have the answer to that. Do I think it's related to estrogen? I'm going to say no, because tren can do it. I've seen people take D-ball and test and not have a problem, and they take 15 mgs of tren every other day, and the blood pressure's through the roof.
Okay.
Right.
So it might be some type of androgen receptor mediated functionality of it, rather than just estrogen causing fluid retention. Because there's not a lot of people.
Right. I mean, that's all is because that. You guys there?
Yeah, I'm here.
It's skipping a little bit.
Yep. Yeah.
Shit.
Well, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's skipping a little bit. You there?
Yeah, we're here
right now.
You're good?
Yeah, we can.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was going to say was, obviously you can make the argument that gear can increase your testosterone. I mean, a gear can increase your testosterone, which converts to estrogen. Estrogen creates the bloat, which is extra body weight that brings up your blood pressure. But I don't know if estrogen itself is causing the high blood pressure. Do you know what I'm saying?
Estrogen receptor binding would cause. I was thinking mostly just total body water increase.
Right.
Body. Okay.
Yeah. I'm lucky. My blood pressure doesn't change. It just doesn't.
And then
although when I was 265, my blood pressure was higher than it has been, but it was still normal.
Okay. And then the next direction of questions had to do with, you seem to be an expert on micronutrients, and most of us coaches are not. And then also the probiotics, active versus not active. The kimchi and the sauerkraut versus the pill form probiotics. I know that you're a big proponent of gut health, and I wanted to hear your take on all this stuff.
Yes. I just recently attended a fancy seminar and last year and some of this year about prebiotics and probiotics and all the supplements and stuff. And the bottom line is we know very, very little by the gut microbiome and how it works. We know very little. Now, probiotics tend to be a hit or miss. Less than 50% benefit from them. Some people they take them to get worse, and some people feel nothing at all. So it's not a clear-cut answer whether they're going to be useful or they are not. I personally think it would be almost more useful to try digestive enzyme that will assist in breaking down excessive amounts of food. If you obviously take, antibiotics and they're cleaning out the healthy gut, then obviously probiotic can help replenish that after the treatment. Mm-hmm. So that's something that could be used. But then again, there's research supporting now that it doesn't really do as much, or it could be doing harm or whatever. We really don't know. And the people out there who are probiotic advocates, I tell people, if you want to give it a try to see if it helps, sure. But don't think that it's going to be the cure-all if you're eating tons of garlic and onion, an absurd amount of food in your diet that's generally gas-causing and causing issues. A lot of the times people are ingesting foods on a regular basis that are problematic. They already are in inflamed state, and they think that taking supplements is going to help that inflamed state. It's not until you remove those problematic foods, especially for that individual. So I would recommend an elimination diet first before, honestly, a product. But first, for the prebiotics go, so this is kind of an issue in bodybuilding, right? So in bodybuilding, we need to consume large quantity of calories consistently in the off season to grow, of course. So obviously, we start to lose our appetite. So what do? We're like, can't be eating all these potatoes, can't be eating all these apples and oatmeal, so I'm going to stick with mainly rice cereals, rice checks, things that are easy to eat, easy to digest. But we also end up doing is we deplete our intake of prebiotic fibers, which our large intestine needs to function properly. Long periods of time going without health and a good amount of prebiotics, which is fibers and oats and various foods, bananas, apples, you can deficient, and then you can develop more inflammation in the intestinal tract. And then it just becomes this domino effect of issues. And they have related bacteria deficiency in the large intestine with a whole array of inflammatory diseases. So that's where people need to understand that there has to be some type of balance. Now, I'm not saying that you have to eat apples, potatoes, and oatmeal every day. It just means that as the off season starts to progress, you start pushing those calories, the diet shouldn't be fiberless. There should be some sources. It doesn't have to be 15 ounces of potato. It could be 5 ounces of potato. It could be an apple. It could be a banana. It could be a little bit of oat bran or oatmeal. You could cycle between these. You could have legumes. So there's certain things you can have in there in small amounts that can help you in the long run and help you digest food better. Well, the problem is when people don't have those foods for a long period of time, and they read about it and they go, oh, this is good for me. And then they do too much. And then their stomach's like pregnant and they're farting all the time. And they're like, dude, I'm intolerant to all these foods. I can't eat them. It's like, it doesn't work that way. If you have been fiberless for a long time or low fiber and you try to bring them in, you need to bring it in small amounts over time until tolerated, because everybody has a threshold. You can't go from 15 grams of fiber to 50. That's not going to work out, Right. And then work your way up. But that's important. That's, I think, a huge missing link. I mean, dude, I have ulcerative colitis, and knock on wood, I haven't had any symptoms or issues in almost 2 years. And I accompanied that through the correction of my diet, because I was one of those guys that was just eating white rice, chicken, oatmeal. Oh, I have to fit all this food. I'm going to lower the vegetable intake to make sure I can get all this stuff. And eventually, I was shitting blood and mucus 15 times a day, and I don't have IBD in my family. I don't have it. So it's like I brought that on myself.
Okay, so to reverse engineer what you're saying is, if you're a chicken and rice guy because you're trying to take advantage of your intestinal real estate and you want to get the most amount of calories for your buck but use clean food, you still have to incorporate some fibrous foods like apples, bananas, and potatoes for your carbs so that you continue to get the fiber you need. Otherwise, you might run into some type of IBD problems in the future.
You could potentially, correct. So for those who are listening, if what you do is you Google prebiotic rich foods, you see what's on that list, you see what you like, incorporate small amounts of that in your diet if you are absent with them, and then over time add a little bit more. But by no means do you have to be consuming 50% of your carb intake from prebiotic-rich foods. That's going to be difficult. Because as bodybuilders, we're not eating 200 carbs a day. We're eating 600, 700, sometimes 1,000. So eating 500 carbs of oatmeal, it's not going to work out.
No. I mean, it could just be too as simple as, like you said, having a little bit of potato and taking like a couple ounces of potato and mixing it in with your rice, right? And having rice and potato in the same meal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think different potatoes digest differently. Right. Sweet potatoes generally are more tolerable. Baby gold white potatoes are more tolerable. Idaho potatoes can be a problem for somebody. Russet potatoes, so experiment with it. And obviously the dark purple potatoes and the various colored potatoes, those can cause problems too. So keep it simple and start small and work your way up. But you got to have a balanced diet. And as we're getting more extreme into bodybuilding and learning more about training, more about drugs, more about nutrition, we also know that if our digestive tract takes a turn south, we are negating everything we're doing. Yeah, not to mention we're doubling our risk for colon cancer and problems down the road.
So what would you say your top 5 fruits are? If you wanted to hit all your micros and prebiotics with 5 fruits, what would you say those are?
All right. So, I mean, that's hard to do, just all the micros. But, I mean, I think doing mushrooms in a reasonable amount, because mushrooms can cause gas in large amounts. Mushrooms, dark leafy greens, kale, spinach, carrots. You cook them, they digest better, they break down better. What else? Blueberries, strawberries, blueberries are great. Bananas are great too. They're easy, they're cheap. Most people like bananas. They're high in prebiotics. You just don't want to eat them too ripe because obviously the sugar content changes and you can actually cause more bloating and gas when they're overly ripe. That's something to keep in mind. And then having a sweet potato, a little bit here and there is fine. But I mean, the thing is this with us is we eat such large quantities. It's not that, like the most people are, if I say to a 5'3" female who's not a lifter and they're eating vegetables twice a day, I want them to have a greater variety than what I just mentioned. But for us, since we might be eating 6 feeds a day, I can throw in a few carrots, some spinach or kale, or have a salad with cucumbers and stuff like that, and have some fruit 2 or 3 times a day to mix it up. And also citrus fruits. Citrus fruits are unbelievable. Kiwi's unbelievable. And then avocado. Right. But avocado in limited amount. Avocado is another one where it's a double-edged sword. You go over a certain amount, you're done.
So let me go through that list and see if I understood the micro elements of this. So the carrots are going to provide vitamin A. The sweet potato will provide vitamin A. The K1 will come from the dark leafies. That the citrus will have vitamin C. And these are the main vitamins you don't get from an all meat and rice diet. Potassium you don't get from rice, but it'll come in the potato and it'll come in the banana. And then, of course, an avocado has the best blend of the fats, including MCTs, and I think there's even some omega-3s in there. Was I accurate with that?
Oh yeah, and they have a lot more than that too. And the mushrooms have high amounts of selenium. Carrots is a good source of fiber. We have vitamin C in almost all of that. But there's a lot of minerals and things like what people don't understand. It's not just isolated A, D, and K, B and C, and the trace minerals. It's synergistically how the food works. So in my master's program, when they did survival with cancer in people who take supplements and people who eat a balanced diet, fruits and vegetables, the people who had cancer who ate a balanced diet, fruits and vegetables versus the diet that was primarily a supplement, the supplement group died way faster, even though it's providing an ungodly amount of micronutrients, right? So they theorize that there's something that's synergistic about the food that you eat that doesn't behave the same as a synthetic multivitamin. So they don't understand why, they just know that group survives more. So I tell people is find a group of vegetables and fruits that you like and cycle them and stay with it.
Was the supplement group, did they outlive the cancer longer than the I don't do nothing but McDonald's and Oreos group?
Oh, no, because people with lung cancer and taking vitamin A, they died faster.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, no.
So that's where they get this idea that multivitamins are bad for you, is that they have a couple studies on cancer patients or whatever.
Well, it's the thing is, how the public is, it's about interpretation. Right. So these greens powders that come out, people are like, oh, I don't have to eat vegetables ever again. I can just have greens powders. That's how we don't interpret it that way. But the general public sees things like, well, I don't eat fruits and vegetables, so I'll just take a multivitamin. Even better yet, I'll take 3 of them. and they think that they're covered when now they're having toxicity levels. So that's how the general public works. And that's why, like, as health and nutrition educators, and even us in bodybuilding, we have to be careful what we say and how it's misconstrued to be very clear to people, because it's about balance and there's no easy way into anything. And you have to understand what you're working with. People always want cut and dry answers. What's best, Chris? This or that. It's like, well, in this circumstance, this is better. In this circumstance, that's better,
And I had a wise friend say to me, you can't give people conditional operants, like if this, then that their brain just won't process it.
Right.
You can handle if this, then that. Like if you have symptoms, wear a mask. But people can't process that. So everyone has to wear a mask,
Right. Right. Yeah, so just to review, so guys, my diet every day, I have berries, strawberries, or blueberries. I have banana. I have citrus fruits, either orange or grapefruits. I have mushrooms, carrots, spinach, kale, and sometimes I do romaine lettuce. Sometimes I do green beans, but that's usually the vegetables I cycle between. Do I eat broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower? No, because of digestive gas and bloating. But they're great for you. I'm not saying they're not. They're wonderful, but I just can't tolerate them.
So broccoli is supposed to have that IP3-DIM, which my understanding is it binds to toxic industrial estrogens and clear.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion about that?
That's actually true. It's actually true. It's just unclear on how much broccoli you need to eat for that to be effective. That's the other thing, right? When the studies isolate a nutrient, they're like, this nutrient does this, and the small print is like, they had this broccoli powder that was equivalent to 4 pounds of broccoli a day, So it ends up being one of those. But that is true.
Constipating like a motherfucker, and everyone.
There's no way. 4 pounds of broccoli.
Yeah. But things like garlic, onion, sulfur-containing vegetables like that are very detoxifying. So, I mean, those are true. But again, personally, I can't be eating garlic all day long.
Because you get gas, right?
I get gas, I get heartburn. I just can't, Even when I was 20, I could do it. I can't do it now.
Every year you lose a food after 30.
Yeah, so true.
Don't study on that. That's just my wisdom.
I love when people are like, dude, how do you not cheat your diet? I'm like, let me tell you, it's easy. Because if I eat that meat lover's pizza with onion on it, because I'll be done for 3 days.
Yeah. At least the rest of the day, you'll be laying on the couch with
that's not worth it. That's not fun.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
You actually just knocked out one of my questions that I got, which is, what does your daily diet look like? So.
Yeah, my daily diet now, I just do 5 meals now.
Okay.
I emphasize, I do eat red meat maybe, 4 times a week, but it's usually the grass-fed 93% lean, ground beef. I'll do bison. I do quite a bit of salmon these days. I do Bell and Evans chicken, which is air chilled. I don't buy store-bought chicken anymore. And I do pasture-raised eggs, and of course egg whites in the carton. I like actually egg whites. People trash on them because they're basically nutrientless. And they're, and they eat a lot of egg whites. You can deplete your body of biotin, but I mean, I don't care. I like egg whites, and I want to have extra protein instead of eating 10 whole eggs.
Right.
So you digest that even though it's not cooked. You don't have to denature the protein.
Oh no, I cook them.
Thank you for clarifying, because that people who are watching this are going to start drinking egg whites from the container and say, Chris told me to do it.
You know what's funny? People ask me that. My clients ask me that. They're like, can I do it? I'm like, you can do it. I will tell you they're not quite as digestible, and that's true. And there's honestly a large percent of people that just have diarrhea from it. I think I've had about 6 clients. We had to pull a plug on it, and they're like, well, I've been doing it forever. I'm like, dude, just because you're doing something forever and all of a sudden becomes a problem doesn't mean it's not going to be a problem. We age, things change. Plus, if you open the carton and say it's a, 32 ounce, right? Is it a 32 ounce? Open the carton and you drink half of it and let it sit in the fridge for 3 days, and then you drink the other half of it, you probably already have too much bacteria in it by then. If you're going to drink the carton, you better finish it that day, and make sure it was properly cooled all the time, because, I mean, I'd rather not be like pissing out my ass. So I rather cook them, and I like eating food.
Yeah, I used to do that. I used to drink them out of the carton, and I found that 16 ounces a day I can handle, but anything over 16 ounces, if I do like 32, if I do it twice, that's it. Diarrhea for the rest of the day, probably the next day after that. It doesn't digest. It just goes straight through you. Gas real bad. But if I cook them, 32 ounces in a day, all cooked, I'm fine. Not an issue.
Yep. Same here.
I don't know if there's a study, and I've read this, that you really only absorb about 50% of the protein when it's not cooked. Like the absorption rate is way down as well.
It's shape, and your enzymes can't cleave it correctly.
Right.
But if you get it straightens it out, and then it can get cleaved by trypsin and chymotrypsin and papain and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the percent, but I know you're right. There's a percent that is less digestible and broken down. I do know that. I remember looking at studies a long time ago because somebody was arguing about, like, you can't eat whole eggs at all raw because they're not going to digest. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And when I looked it up, it was like partially digested. And, because remember the old school people used to take like 4 whole raw eggs, drink it
in the cup and drink it. Yeah.
Rocky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it may be more convenient for you. You may be saving yourself some time, but you're wasting, a large amount of that protein. It's just going through you. You're not even benefiting from it. So, you're better off probably drinking a damn protein shake at that point rather than drinking egg whites. You might as well just.
I had to say, the whole convenience thing that drives me nuts. Yeah. I would do it, but it's not convenient. I'm like, getting jacked is not convenient. Getting strong is not convenient. Being good at anything is not convenient.
Not convenient, right? You have to find a way.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's my pet peeve. I hear it all the time.
Tell a normal person that, though, who's just they don't understand that. You tell a bodybuilder, and they're kind of like, okay, you're probably right. All right, I got a couple questions here. We touched on the gut health, so I'm gonna kind of segue into this one a little bit. This Tommy Styles gave me this one, actually. Typical gut health things to monitor for an off-season male pushing food for size. What problem scenarios that may occur, and what supplements or interventions can be used to solve these problems?
Biggest issue that people get in the off season, I'll start with some of them, not in a particular order. Reflux. People will start using more condiments to get the food down because they lose their appetite. Those condiments end up being hot sauce, buffalo sauce, barbecue sauce, and that ends up disrupting their stomach, ends up getting them reflux, heartburn, and then every time they eat, they're burping up stomach acid, and then they don't know what to do at that point. And obviously, to do at that point, the answer is not just to take Tums and keep slinging barbecue sauce. That's not the answer.
Right.
The answer is to help get your stomach to recover. So the first thing to do is to remove those acidic, problematic foods. Remove the spicy foods, remove the pepper, reduce your coffee intake, cut the stimulants back, eat 2 hours before you lie down before you go to bed. Limit your chewing gum at experiment. If you're eating chocolate flavored protein, maybe go to vanilla. Do everything you can to get your stomach back on track. If you're taking D-bone, anadrol oils, cut them out. Let the stomach recover, and then bring them back in, because you're not going to recover if you're 50%. Right? Yeah. I'd rather just cut everything out, recover, and then you can start introducing some foods back in again once your stomach recovers. One thing that you can do, it's not proven for everybody. I have personal anecdotal experience. I will tell anybody who's listening, this isn't the fix for everybody, but apple cider vinegar with a mother can help with that. It doesn't mean you go from 0 tablespoons a day to 5. Okay? It means you take maybe a tablespoon and mix it into 16 ounces of, like, say, a diet Snapple, and you drink half of it in the morning, half of it in the middle of the day, and then eventually progress to 2 tablespoons a day, but dilute it. Don't pound it. It's going to burn your stomach.
Thank you.
Right, but that can help significantly.
You know what's worse is when you put the apple cider vinegar in a neti pot. Like, it's like if your kids are bad.
Oh my gosh. That's brutal. Yeah. The reflux one is a big one, and the other one's appetite. And usually the appetite's related to feeling distended, bloated, or having slow-moving bowel movements. So that would be to diagnose, why is that happening? I don't drink enough water because I'm so full all the time. Well, that's a problem. Yeah. What are you eating for carbs? And then they'll run down their carbs, and now they're down to 0 vegetables, and they're eating nothing but white rice. And as many of you guys know, white rice is binding, right? Mm-hmm. It can cause constipation. So I start changing some of those carbs up a little bit. I might do cream of rice. It's a little different tolerated than white rice is. I might change it out to a little bit of sweet potato and a little bit of rice, or I might go to oat bran. Oat bran's, for some reason, is wonderful at making you go other than oatmeal. It's better than oatmeal for sure in that regard. Mm-hmm. I would incorporate more fruits. Fructose draws double the amount of water into the intestinal tract as sugar does, so you get more hydration pulled in, and that can help you go.
Right.
So usually the fruits. It doesn't mean tons of berries. That's probably not the best way to go with berries, but probably more. I'll probably go with citrus fruits more frequently and things like that.
Okay.
Apples can be problematic sometimes. Sometimes it can help you go. Sometimes it may not, because they do have sorbitol in it, which is a sugar alcohol. But that's what I would do in that case. A lot of it's individual. It's hard to say, a broad spectrum, but that's usually the issue: the gas, the bloating. And the other thing is, the third one would be they're using too many dry spices. They have garlic, onion, which is a real easy fix, and they're just gassy all the time. Yeah. And usually I just go through the list of all the gas-forming foods: garlic, onion, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli. If they're chewing excessive amounts of chewing gum because of sugar alcohol, xylitol, mannitol, sugar-free syrups, Walden Farms junk, all that stuff can cause bloating and gas. And I usually
shit out of you. Yep.
Yeah. And I actually
go ahead.
I had a recent client who was going way overboard with Equal. Like, I'm talking like 30 packets a day. And he was bloated all the time. I'm like, listen, man, like, I know there's no probably factual evidence on this, but just get rid of that crap. Let's just get rid of it completely for 72 hours. Get rid of all these fake sugars, all these flavored stuff. And he did. His stomach went right down. He lost like 6 pounds, no distension. I'm like, dose dependence. People forget that sometimes it's dose dependent.
Yeah.
2 equal packets, I'm fine, but 20's not.
So one thing
20 of anything is probably not a good idea.
One thing I found that would help with the heartburn is I get a blender, I put water in it, I put my chicken tenderloin in it, I put jasmine.
Oh, fuck this.
And I blend and I put in potassium salt, 50% potassium, 50% sodium, and I blend that shit up, and I drink it, and my stomach went down, my gas went away, my heartburn went away. And you're always hungry, so you can just keep slamming food all day.
What was the normal meal before that?
Same amount of food. It's just
like any condiments or any spices.
Yeah. I would either use avocado, like a guacamole, but a really natural, bland guacamole that you couldn't taste anything in it.
Like, it doesn't have garlic or onion in it.
It might, but in trace amounts. And then I would have soy sauce on the rice rather than potassium salt. And then another meal I might do is I would use some general, like Beijing beef sauce from Panda Kitchen that you get at the grocery store on the chicken, but not very much, like a tablespoon. It was just, I'm not a big condiment guy because I've got sensitive taste buds. I'm sensitive. But that's pretty much it. I'm not a heavy seasoned guy. Usually when I eat other people's cooking, it's just
not a heavy seasoned guy, but he'll drink a chicken shake.
Yeah. You know what, though? A lot of what was happening to make you feel better was probably the absence of all that stuff as well. Because avocados, I can't tolerate guacamole from the store because even if it says guacamole or holy guacamole packets, the second ingredient is garlic.
Yeah, I use the brand Walmart holy guacamole. I always use Walmart brand because I want to start growing tentacles eventually, and I think that that's the key.
Yeah.
You mentioned coffee, and I think with the condiments and the coffee, I think probably the number one thing that caused a lot of the heartburn and stuff is that we're drinking 3-4 cups of coffee, or they're drinking energy drinks or something acidic along with all the condiments and everything that they're putting in there. Like you said, Tabasco sauce, hot sauce, the Frank's Red Hot, that's what they're putting on it. It's heartburn waiting to happen. I mean, you're just waiting to be spewing acid all day long. I don't know how you can eat at that point.
I forgot to mention one more thing. And one of the other protocols I do, if somebody has issues with digestive and I look at everything and all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, I'll usually recommend a digestive enzyme. I usually recommend a weak one where it doesn't have a lot of digestive enzymes per unit. That way they can take one per meal, because some of them are like 50,000, what you need, only take once a day. I'm like, we're bodybuilders. We eat constantly. So I rather have them more frequent through the day, and that also helps. But what you also said too, I go through my bodybuilders. I'm like, hey man, how are you making your food? And they're like, I just put like 10 breasts in the oven. I just bake them until they're done. I'm like, do you use a thermometer? They're like, no. I'm like, you just cook it for 40 minutes? They're like, yeah, it's really dry, so I soak it with a bunch of condiments. I'm like, the problem is you don't know how to cook. If you start to learn how to prepare your chicken better, maybe thinly slice it, maybe pan sear it with a light spray in the off season, cook both sides, internal temperature to 165, you'll have less dry chicken, more tolerable. You can use less, you can be more excited about your food and then eat it. Because, you know, in the off season, a lot of the guys we know that grow the most are the ones that have the best appetites, right? If you have poor appetite and you're not excited about your food, you're not going to eat it, you're going to be like, I'm going to go to Wendy's. I need to get my calories in. Then you go to Wendy's. The next day you're like, this breakfast tastes like shit. Maybe I'll get some bacon, egg, and cheeses at the local grocery, the local breakfast place. And then it's downhill.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I cook all my chicken in the crock pot and I'll shred it.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
It digests really, really easy, but I don't get it cooked to the point where the water is gone out of the crock pot. So when I take it all out, I put it in the Tupperware. It's shredded, but the water that it's been in is still there, so it kind of reabsorbs, and that way it's moist enough to where I can eat it, and I'm not choking it down because it's so dry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do that too. I recently made a video. I took a huge 9-pound eye-round roast and roasted it in the oven, and I cooked 125, and usually eye-round tastes like crap if you cook it, but it's amazing, Dude, can you hold on 1 second?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you get the dog?
Moist. You like my choice of moist?
Tommy, do that. Yeah, I didn't know. Because my head's so small, I didn't know if you
Dude, I have 6 dogs. I have 6 dogs.
Well, I remember you had 2 before, so since when you were first in Quad, so now you must have got more.
It's fine.
They're breeding.
Oh my gosh,
they're feeding them
All
too
right,
good.
so I got another one here. Here's another good one that I think we should talk about. What are your thoughts on GDAs, most notably berberine?
I know very little about them. Whether they work to the degree we need them to work, I don't know. I really don't know. I know there's been a huge metformin kick, a long time ago, and then all of a sudden that's phasing out. So I really don't know if we're having insulin resistance from growth and we're actually legitimately having insulin resistance, if those are going to assist in helping. I really don't know the answer.
I use berberine when my carbs get really, really high. I'll use it in like 500 milligrams, and I've noticed that it does help bring the blood sugar down. Now, there's no growth hormone there at all, but I'm testing blood sugar. When I do this, I'll test my blood sugar like every couple of days fasted, and I will notice that those fasted numbers are coming down once I add the berberine. So there is some effect to it for me personally, and I know for say like lifestyle clients and stuff of mine, if they're having all that issue, they come to me. They're 80 to 100 pounds overweight. They've got a lot of weight to lose. We do a little keto diet at the beginning to kind of get insulin sensitivity back. But once we start introducing carbs, I'll add the berberine, and that does keep their blood sugar levels lower, and they're able to actually, eat more than just, 30 carbs a day without blowing back up. So there is something to it. I don't know if it's necessarily, like you said, with the growth hormone, if it's going to be that big of a deal, whereas where insulin would be better, or metformin might be better for something like that to bring that number down. Because if you're on growth hormone for 3-4 months, it's not uncommon to see fasted blood levels over 100.
Right. Yeah.
120 is normal.
I had a couple pre-diabetics, and they did not want to take meds. And 3 particular clients, we end up using RALA, R-alpha-folic acid, 600 milligrams a day, and it worked really well. I mean, it was accompanied, you got to take it into account. It was accompanied exercise, it was accompanied diet, but that A1C went down fast. And when they get the A1C in that 3 months, it went down like 2.2 points, so some of that could be some work. And I noticed personally when I used to take it, Evan recommended I take it 1 year, and I was taking it into prep. I kept going hypo constantly. So I'm like, I got to get rid of this during contest prep, because it was just becoming too much. But there's some thought process in that as well.
Yeah, I put
like battle mead.
Sulfate and chromium in my mid and post workout supplement. So that whatever post-workout carbs they have will go where they ideally to muscle glycogen synthesis, and not just get stored in the liver, because the Vandil is already taking care of that for the most part.
Yeah.
But I did not put in berberine.
There's a lot of good useful supplements out there, and what they do is, like you guys know, it's experimenting anecdotally. It's working. We just don't know how well it works, if it's going to work with everybody in every situation. but it's definitely worth a shot. Give it a shot and educate yourself about it and see if it's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
That's why I threw in the 4 that have different mechanisms of action, as I assume that it would have synergistic effects. And if someone was resistant or intolerant to one, then the other 3 would do the job.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a very good thought process.
Yeah. And it does work because I use it myself, and it's the first time I used it, I didn't realize how strong it was. So after like 3 days in a row of training and using the intra and the post, on 100 grams of carbs around training and post, I went hypo like an hour later because I was like, I used a little too much. It was like 2 scoops, and it just kept building in my system over a couple of days to the point where I'm hypoglycemic an hour after eating, and I had 100 grams of carbs intra, and then 50 grams intra and 50 grams post, and I'm hypo instantly off of it.
And what's funny is Keith is using
it does work.
Dose. So he's 250-pound male bodybuilder using a 100-pound woman's dose, and it is still overkill.
Yeah. Sometimes too, people don't forget that I've had more clients have hypo issues in off season than in contest prep, and without using any sort of GDA. And the mechanism in that is insulin dumping, right? So I mean, if you're eating lower glycemic meals, I call them lower glycemic meals because obviously if you eat protein and fat, to digest slower, and all of a sudden you have post-workout, I mean, it's cream of rice and whey and nothing else, you're going to get a bigger insulin dump, and some people might react really strongly to that, and all of a sudden 45 minutes they're going down. So that's all something to keep in mind, and sometimes just adding 10 grams of fat does the trick too, just changing that.
No, absolutely. All right. Okay, so Nelson Jones sent me this one. He said, I got to ask you about the story of making weight for North Americans and nationals.
Oh, Jesus. All right. Yeah. I mean, dude, you're only young once, and we're only stupid once, thank God. I would never do that ever again. It's funny. It's like when you're young and you look back at it, like there wasn't a thought in my mind I was going to die, So I'll tell it real briefly, quickly, so I don't bore people with this cute story, but so I was planning to be a heavyweight, and then right around 3 weeks out, I said, Factory, I'm like, man, I think maybe we should do light heavyweight. And he goes, I agree. And he's like, all right, well, we'll just continue our path. And I get to a week out of North Americans, 7 days out, and I think it was about 214, 213. So obviously the first things you do is what? Remove the stuff that causes bloat. So I cut the growth, lose a little bit, cut my injectables out. Obviously, that's going to take a little bit to work. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm looking at my sodium intake. I'm looking at my water intake. I'm like, oh, my water is about 2 gallons. My salt intake's pretty high. So I'm going to cut my salt in half 7 days out to see if I can shed a little extra water. Shed a little bit more water. Call Evan. I'm like, Evan, man, like, I really don't want a diuretic up the day before. Like, do you think I should maybe possibly run some aldactone now? Maybe it's baby dose. And he goes, it's risky too. He goes, maybe just do tiny dose, like 12.5 milligrams, something tiny, just to see how your body reacts on Monday. So I did that, and I lost nothing. So I'm like, all right, what do you think? He's like, all right, try 25. Do 25, started losing a bit more. So I started 25 every day. And at this point, sodium is 50%, water still at 2 gallons. So then I cut my water down on Tuesday to think about 1.5 gallons. And then Wednesday comes, 1.5 gallons. So I lose a little bit more. Now I'm like, I think 209, 210. So now I might try to figure out, all right, Thursday's weigh-in, Thursday at 1 o'clock, and I have to have time to fill up. So I got to be middle of the day, 198. So I'm about 10 pounds over. So I'm looking at everything I got to do, and Factory's like, maybe we should, do this. I'm like, no, I'd rather do it environmentally, because that way I can quickly reverse it. If I do it systemically and I take something, you can't really undo that sometimes, or it doesn't go well. Your body might react strongly the other way. So my mom's a champ. I go, Mom, I got a favor to ask because I don't want to go with my friends because I feel like they're going to stress me out. I'm like, can you drive with me to North Americans? But I'm going to drive. And she goes, okay. I go, but you can't comment on how fast I'm going to drive. I go, and we have to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, oh my God. Okay. So the whole time she had a newspaper and I had a sweatshirt, sweatpants on, the heat blasting, traveling like 90 because I wanted to get there around I don't know, I want to get there around 11:30 or noon so I can check my weight, get checked in, and then make sure I made weight. And I had 2 scales with me. So I think Thursday morning I was 206, right? And at this point, I think I did 12.5 hydrochlorothiazide AM and PM. I don't really believe in large diuretics. I just don't. And so I still had the 25 milligrams of Dactone daily. I had the 12.5 AM and PM daily. Now, come Wednesday, I was obviously 0 carbs and no added fats, just protein, vegetables, and I think my water was a gallon. So when I woke up Thursday, it just I didn't eat or drink anything. Heat blasting, sweatpants, driving, and my poor mom. My mom's like, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, all right, this is the deal. I go, we're gonna get out. I'm gonna let you out. You're gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna pump gas. You're gonna jump back, finish pumping gas. I'm gonna go and weigh myself, and we're gonna get in and go. So my mom was pretty good at like making it systematic. So
Poor mom.
Yeah, poor mom. So she got there. She's like, it's hot in here. I'm gonna put the window down. Shut up. Let's keep going. So like, I was so determined, man. Like you know, sometimes you get in prep where like you're so determined that like you could be like your foot be cleaved off and you're still walking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that was going to stop this situation. So we get to North Americans. I get up to the hotel. I get checked in, and I have 2 scales. And I strip down naked. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And I get on the scale. I'm like 204.5. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, let me take the scale. And this scale is like 204. I'm like 204.5, 204. I'm like, ah, crap. All right. So I call down desk. I'm like, do you guys have a sauna? And they're like, yeah, we have a sauna. I'm like, all right, perfect. So I go downstairs, and I'm like, Mom, this is the deal. Like, I have to lose like 6 more pounds, and I'm going to go in the sauna. And she's like, you haven't eaten or drinking anything all day. I'm like, Mom, just don't worry about it. So just, I'm going to go in the sauna. I'm just letting you know. I'm not an idiot. I mean, I am an idiot for doing this, but I'm not completely stupid. So I go into the sauna, and it was a very good sauna in North Americans, man. It was very dry heat. I think it was like 120. It was perfect. So I brought my scale down there. I brought some towels, and I went in there with just my posing trunks, and I wanted the sweat to evaporate. I don't want it to sweat and soak my shirt and then have my skin absorb any fluid possibly. So I went in there for about, I think, 5 minutes, came out, cooled off, because I worried about getting heat stroke, you know? So I went in there for 5 minutes, came out, cooled off for 5 minutes, went back in there for 8 minutes to assess my tolerance, came back out, cooled off, went back in again, and then came out and checked my weight, and I was like 202, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is working. So I did that a few more times, and then I remember some guy comes in, he's like, are you Chris? I go, yeah. He goes, some lady out there says your mom, you just want me to come in and check on you? Make sure I was like, and in the sauna. So, all right. So now I'm starting to feel dizzy, real weak, real flat, tired. But what was interesting is when I get super, super flat and dry like that, I actually get insanely grainy. So I'm just a flat version of myself, but grainy. I have more lines, not less lines. I just have no pop. So I go down, check my weight again, and I'm like, I'm borderline now. I'm like, it's 199.5. So I'm like, fuck it. What if their scale's really light and I go in and it's 194? And I'm like wasting my time. So I walked in there around 12:45 or an hour before or whatever, like 15 minutes before it started. And I'm like, really, those guys can be kind of dicks sometimes. So I was like kind of polite. I'm like, hey man, like, you think it's a possibility I can jump on the scale real quick? He probably looked at my face. I was going to die. He's like, yeah, man, just check your weight. And I checked weight, and it was like 197. And I'm like, 197? And I get back on it again. He's like, oh, yeah. He's like, oh, you want to just check in now? I go, yeah, let's check in now. And he's okay, cool. Let me get your pamphlet. And he's like, where are you registered? I'm like, I was registered as a heavyweight, but clearly I'm not a heavyweight. He goes, all right. And I'm watching him change it. Make sure he puts it in the right pile, Puts it in the right pile. All right, so I'm good. I made weight. I'm good. He goes, yep, 100%. I'm like, light heavyweight, right? He goes, yeah, man. I'm like, all right, good. So I call factory. I'm like, all right, how do I unfuck this, What do I do? He's like, drink a liter of water and have an 8-ounce steak and 2 cups of rice. And then I started the fill-up process. What's the good story quick about that is, so there was no bantamweights, lightweights that year. There's no bantamweights, no lightweights. So it went right to middleweight, or it might have been like 2 lightweights. So it started at 8, right? Around 8. So factory's like, hey man, they have bantamweights light weights and they have maybe welters and they have middles. So you have some time. So eat your meal at 8 o'clock. So I start to eat my meal at 8 o'clock, and my friend's wife downstairs texts me and goes, "Hey, middleweights are on stage." And I'm like, "What?" So I fly downstairs. I'm going down the stairs, my boxers, my trunks. My legs are so tired. You know, you can't go down the stairs fast when you're in prep, you know. My knees hurt. So I run in there, and I'm like, "All right, light heavyweight, Chris." And the lady looks at me, such a bitch. She goes, "You're done. You missed it. Go home." So I'm like, fuck. And at that point, dude, it's my own fault. You know what I mean? So I just turn around, and my friend who's with me is more argumentative than me. So he's like, no, fuck that. He did all this work. Why is he going heavyweight? Just put him on the heavyweight grab, and you can go in the heavyweight crowd at least. And she goes, "No, you missed it. You should have been paying attention." And some guy comes running back, and he looks at my number. He goes, "Oh, we're looking for you. Here, you're lined up over here." And I look at that bitch. I'm like, "You fucking cunt." I'm like, "Dude, you almost made me miss it, and this guy's looking for me," you know?
Right.
I walk over there, didn't pump up, no oil, shitty tan, and just walked on stage because as he was calling me out, we're walking on. So I missed the walkthrough. I missed the walkthrough, you know, the first 10, second 10, third 10. And they compared everybody, last call out. And then Steve Weinberger goes, 113, please stay on stage. I need to call back out 11 other numbers, and then I end up getting fifth. Which like never happens.
Right.
And so the rest of the day goes on. I fill up. I get a better tan. I get obviously everybody's calling me. Evan's calling me. He's like, "Dude, I heard you fucking do have a tan on." I'm like, "Oh." It's like I explained to everybody. And Thackeray's like, "Why is your tan fucked up?" And then David Bay is like, "Dude, why did you have your tan on?" I'm like, "Oh." I'm like, "Dude, I fucked up." I'm like, "What do you want from me? I don't have any excuses besides my own fault." So I come back on stage at night show, and it's probably honestly the best overall package I ever had was at North Americans at night. I was grainy, hard, full. My tan was perfect, and everything came out. But I ended up getting fifth, and I was actually going to quit bodybuilding. I was actually going to be done and move on. And everybody persuaded me not to and do nationals. David Bay wanted to interview me, and then I said, "No, man, I'm done." And then Thackeray and Evan and a couple other people were like, "No, dude, since you're already lean and you did get fifth and Steve Weinberger saw you, why don't you just do it again in 3 months?"
Go do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I didn't have any gear. I didn't have anything. I got rid of everything. Like, I was done. So I had to scrounge around and make the best of it. But the next time making weight for nationals was much harder. I didn't have the same supplements, super supplements, as I did at North Americans for nationals. I did run growth. So there's some things that did play into it, but I also had a cruise for 8 days planned at 6 weeks out that I couldn't get out of. So I was doing that 6 weeks out of nationals.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I came back from that. I came back like 10 pounds heavier just because the water and the bloat disrupted training, a lot of stress. But long story short, we were at nationals, same issue with making weight, except the sauna at nationals sucked really bad. It was one of those, it was like a higher humidity, not a steam room, but a little higher humidity. So going through the whole sort of drill, I'm like, I've done this before, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
You know, go through make sure I get the hotel in the right place with the sauna. I just wanted to make sure everything was easing stress. So I think I was 216 Wednesday morning when I got up. And then I dropped a significant amount of water from Wednesday morning to Wednesday night. I went to bed at Wednesday night at like 2:12. So I'm like, you think I'm going to get this? This is going to be good. And I wake up Wednesday morning. I was like 207. I'm like, this is around where we're straight. This is great. Yeah, no problem. So did the same protocol again, you know, with all Dactone, and, you know, if everything worked before, it's going to work again, right? No, it doesn't work that way in bodybuilding. So I get to the sauna, and luckily I have my dad with me. My dad's a physician, you know. So my dad already thinks I'm retarded for doing what we're doing. So I'm like, Dad, I'm just letting you know, like, you know, I'm doing this for diuretics. And he's like, and I'm like, all right, but I got to lose this much of water, so just keep an eye on me. And he's like, if you die in that sauna, he goes, I had nothing to do with this. I'm telling your mother, I had nothing to do with this. So I go to the sauna, and I sit there for like 10 minutes, and I come back out, and I'm down 0.5 pound. And I'm like, oh, shit, this isn't good. So I go in and out of that sauna, I think for at least an hour and a half, maybe more, to the point where I was like, I'm drawing the line here. Like, this is it. So I get on the scale, I was 201. And I'm like, the same thing again. What if their scale's light, right? What if their scale's light? So I'm like, dude, I'm like shaking. You know, I at this point, I'm like, am I, you know, when you're hungry, you have no tolerance. But when you're dehydrated, your brain can't comprehend normal problems. You know, like taxi driver says, I don't know the address. You're like, what do you mean you don't know the address? Like, you just want to, like, you can't figure out problems. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to go see where we're at. If worse comes to worse, I can just take a break for 3 hours, come back, do it again, because I have till 8 o'clock to make the weight. The only issue is for nationals, prejudging's Friday morning, not Saturday, where I have a whole other day to carb up, right? So time is vital. Mm-hmm. So did the sauna, I left the sauna, and my dad, you know, I'm just like, my dad, just take me where I need to go. And I'm just following my dad, you know, walking. I'm just like, you can do it. I'm like,
dead.
So I get in the cab, and I was very stickler on my tan because everybody criticizes my tan. So I get in the cab, and I'm not sitting, I'm kneeling. And the cab driver's like, you need to sit. I'm like, dude, I'm not sitting. I'm telling you right now, I'm not sitting. And he's like, I'm not driving. You know, I'm like, Dad, you better tell this fucking guy to drive. We're gonna have a problem here. I'm gonna lose my mind. So finally the guy's like, fine, whatever, and just drives. So we go there, we go to weigh in, and I see these people walking out pissed, and they're like, oh, dude, they're not letting anybody over even my 0.1. And I'm like, what? And there's already a line out the door, and of course they mix the men's physique guys up with the weigh-ins. I'm like, dude, these guys don't need to weigh in. Get them out of here. Let's get the height. Let us go first. So I get up there, and the guy goes, he's like, what's your weight going to be? I'm like, 198. And he's like, all right, step on. So I go step on. It's a triple beam scale, you know. So he sets it to 198, and I step on it. It goes, bam! It hits it, and he taps it with his finger, and it goes down, bounces up, and comes down, and that thing was on its way back up. And I leaned on my heels back like this on the scale, and the scale lifted a little bit, and it slowed, and then he goes, you're good! And I fell off. I almost lost my balance.
That's an old wrestling trick, man. I used to do that shit when I was wrestling in high school all the time. We'd have the guy come up behind us, and he'd lift up on her elbow. He'd put his finger up on her elbow and lift up on it a little bit, and that thing would just drop.
Yeah. The worst ever, it's like, now once you register for nationals and you're going through, you have to like get your bag, get your T-shirt, and then you have to take a couple pictures, and then you have annoying photographers talking to you. Mm-hmm. It's like I got a steak in my hand, I'm eating it, and I have water in the other hand, and they're getting me to take pictures. I'm not taking pictures. Like, you have to take pictures. I'm like, I just need to eat and get out of here, you know? And then I go outside, and Dave's like, hey, let me interview you. And I'm like, oh my God, I just got to eat my steak and my food and get out of here, because I just wanted to get back, send factory pictures, and then start eating, you know?
Right.
So that was that. But I'll never do that ever again.
Dude, it's because they introduced the bikini and all that shit. So it's like, pictures, yay. It's like any opportunity to make them feel glamorous, and then we get caught up in it.
Dude, that's one part of bodybuilding that I never cared for. Like, I never cared for photo shoots. Like, I never ever in my life like paid for a photo shoot prior to being a professional. Like, it's just not me. I like bodybuilding, I like grinding, I like dieting, I like all the aspects of it. I don't like the whole glamour of it. It's not me, my personality. So I was so annoyed by that stuff. Ugh.
Well, and then you compound that with the fact that you just literally killed yourself to make weight. You need to eat. You haven't eaten in God knows how long. You're dehydrated. You're not comprehending. But you're just happy you made weight, and everybody's in your way. Yeah, you're trying to eat.
Dude, the rebound for nationals was bad. Like, I knew if I ate bad, it was going to be bad. So I actually didn't have one bad meal at all until I think Wednesday after the show. And the worst part about it is I'm cutting water Wednesday, taking diuretics Wednesday. Water is reduced and restricted Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I win. Oh, you have a photo shoot Sunday. Oh, I can't drink water still. Just, you're still restricted. And then my flight's a 4.5 hour flight Sunday night. So obviously, you know what flying does. So it's like every day it was up like 3 or 4 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds. And I was uncomfortable. You know, and thank God I didn't eat bad. If I had a burger and fries or pancakes next day, oh my God, I probably would have had like congestive heart failure on the way back on the flight.
You'd have been 240, just like that.
Yeah.
With with the ankles that are the same size as these.
Only person I've ever met who deduced that the heart shortness of breath from the water bloat post show is congestive heart failure. I've never heard anyone say that, and I was just like, maybe I'm exaggerating. I'm like, no. If it was an 80-year-old person on diuretics and they ate like 10 hot dogs, they have the same symptoms we do after a show going through a drive-through. So it's congestive heart failure in a 23-year-old boy. You know, it's like,
yeah, man, it's just like, people joke about post-show rebounds and stuff. But like, it's actually not funny. Like, if you had an underlying heart issue and you took diuretics and then you then binged on sugar and crap and then drink a bunch of water, you could die. There's been a lot of bodybuilders that died the day after, 2 days after.
I warned them all the same thing. I'm like, don't go and eat everything in sight for the next 3 days. Get your water back in you, but be smart about it. And if they're using diuretics, you need to wean yourself off the diuretics. You can't just take fucking 50 milligrams of Diazide and then just quit. You're going to rebound terribly. You need to like, it needs to be like 25 and then like 12 and a half. And then, because otherwise it's just
sugar's the worst. Tell my clients too. I'm like, nobody's eating sugar Saturday night. Have a burger. Don't be eating cake and candy. You're going to hate your life tomorrow. Hate it. Mm-hmm. I had a client, dude, not a client. My client's friend had refeeding syndrome. You guys familiar with that a little bit? Mm-hmm. So basically, take somebody from another third world country who's very deprived. Obviously, their blood potassium levels and everything, magnesium is relatively low or lower end of normal. And when you give them a bunch of food all at once, when insulin binds to sugar, it pulls a little potassium, sometimes magnesium with it, and then you get a sudden drop of potassium magnesium, and they can die. All right? Or have those symptoms of full cramping, they can't move, their heart gets arrhythmia, and then they die. So one of my friends calls me 6 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. He's like, dude, I have an emergency for my friend. He can you call him? He's having issues after the show. I'm like, all right. So I call him, like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, well, I noticed last night my legs started to feel weak. And, little cramps here and there. And this morning, I started losing motor function on my ability to walk. And he goes, and now it's noon and I can't stand up. And I'm like, listen to me very carefully, all right? You need to call the ambulance right now, all right? You need to tell them exactly what you took. Because he took something like 25 milligram of hydrochlorothiazide every 2 hours on Friday for like 6 doses or something like that. And then had like no water. Somebody you all know very well told him to do that. So he did that, and then that drinking a bunch of Gatorade and sugar and stuff Saturday night might make him feel better, which was the worst. So I go, listen, he goes, no, I'm going to wait for my wife to get home. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You can die. I go, call the ambulance right now. Make sure you tell them what you're taking so they don't load you up on a freaking, bunch of potassium or whatever is going on in your blood now. Like, we don't know what's going on. Just tell them how many diuretics you took, what the dose and exactly what you're on. Do not make that mistake. So he goes in, and I mentioned refeeding syndrome. So he goes into the hospital, tells them everything, and obviously, the attending physician comes in there and they're like, no, you don't have refeeding syndrome. That only happens in third world countries. Da, 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 da. They take his blood. His magnesium was almost undetectable. It was like super low. Potassium was super low. And they go, wow, you're lucky to be alive. And actually, you do have refeeding syndrome. They're like, we have never seen a 226-pound male with refeeding syndrome before. And they were so fascinated. They took all the residents, all the attendings that come in as a case study because they couldn't believe what they're seeing. And he was there for 2 days. They got discharged and he left. But I mean, dude, not good.
It's like, come take a look at this idiot and see what he did to himself. That's what they're thinking. You'll never see this again. And they're like writing this shit down.
He's like, dude, I was on 600 mgs of equipoise. I was on this. And they're like, equipoise? How do you spell that?
Isn't that for horses? Yeah, it's for horses. Sure.
Did he win the show?
No.
That is stupid. It's like, if you're going to die with your sword in your hand, I mean, come on.
At least one.
Still, I mean, there's some local shows I'd die for. Now that I've won it, it doesn't matter. But before, I was willing
Michigan.
Dude,
Michigan. The one year he almost did.
Dude, in bodybuilding, I've always been the guy that, like, when my coach will send me, like, my, like, supplements, I was the guy who cut them in half. I'd be like, I don't know about that. And I just wouldn't tell him. I'd be like, 400 mgs of Tren is now 200. That's in half. And I've always been like that, you know, and I was always, I don't know what it is. I always, like, when I first started, my first cycle was just test propionate for, like, 6 weeks. And, like, I thought, like, this is extreme. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It took me years to even consider taking Trenbolone.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not competing, there's no reason to take Tren. There's no reason to.
Well, you know what's funny? You say that. Do you know how popular that is now amongst the regular gym goers?
You know how popular it is between the bikini girls in Michigan? Seriously.
Dude,
oh, they all love Tren.
I get these questions all the time. Chris, what do you think of Tren-only cycles? And I'm like, I'm looking at this kid. I'm like, how many years have you been training? Oh, 6 months?
Yeah,
I'm like, and you consider taking how much Tren? I always like to hear what they have to say. Well, I was thinking about doing 200 mgs of test a week and 750 mgs of Tren a week. I'm like, who told you to do that? I want to know, like, where's this information coming from? Well, you know, on paper, because everybody always looks things on paper. As you guys know, it's like sometimes things look great on paper, but it does not apply.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work the same way. Well, this is 20 times more androgenic than testosterone, so I'm going to get 20 times the gains. No,
no, it's not happening.
No, definitely not.
No. That's fucking hilarious.
Oh man, that's
they all get the same. Sometimes I wonder where they get this shit. Like, where online do you find this, and who are you asking online to, like? Are you just getting on some fucking random Facebook group that's like closed group and getting on there and like fucking asking these questions to, you know, to the guy that's got fucking site injection welts all over him and stuff?
It's the forums.
Yeah. You know, the forums used to be great. Like the message boards and shit, those used to be great back in the day, but they're shit now because nobody's on them anymore.
Yeah, dude, I had somebody come to me, like somebody messaged me like, hey, I have a copy of Evan's Cycle from Olympia. And I'm like, dude, you know, I'm like really good friends with him, right? And he's like, yeah, he was doing this and this and this. I'm like, I can tell you he was not doing this and this and that. We have a copy of it here. I'm like, you're going to question me. I'm good friends with the dude. You kidding me? That's not true. And the worst part about it is they'll ask you advice knowing that we're experienced and still not believe us.
Right. Well, you're lying. You take way more than that. Okay. Do I?
Okay.
You exactly what I take. Whether I tell you I take 1 gram or 1,000 grams, it doesn't make a difference. I'm still telling you I'm taking steroids. So why would I lie about what I'm taking if I'm telling you I'm taking them? It doesn't make sense to me.
That way.
Right. You know, it's like, so you're doing this. I'm like, yes, this is how much I take in the off season. It's on a blast. It's 1,000 milligrams of Sustanon. It's 600 milligrams of EQ. No, you're going to take more than that. No.
Or they go,
that's
ED?
what I take.
You're like, no, per week. They're like, not ED? No, that's not what I said either.
No, that's per week. You got to be using like growth hormone and insulin and everything. No. 1,000 milligrams of Sustanon, 600 milligrams of EQ. Eat a lot of food, train really hard. You'll be fine.
Dude, the worst thing is the fact that matters not just they don't believe us. It's that, like, what the hell was I going to say? For one, they don't believe us. For two, they actually think this stuff has no consequences. Like there's no consequence to it later, right. You know, like, or they just don't, they see us train and then they train and they think they're training like us. I'm training like you. I'm like, I'm watching, you're not. Mm-hmm. Well, I eat a lot of food. I'm like, well, what's your diet? Is that every day? No, that was yesterday. I'm like, well, what's the rest of the week? Oh, I missed my meals on Tuesday. You know, dude.
Oh, dude, I eat everything. Yeah, that's the problem. You eat everything. Stop eating everything.
If you have an appetite for that, that means you're not eating enough.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Man. Yeah, it's fucked up. I think Todd gets. I know he gets frustrated with it and stuff. Is most of his questions. The first question somebody wants to hire him will ask him is like, "How much gear am I going to take?" And it's like we haven't even discussed diet yet.
Right. It's like if
I'm not going to discuss drugs with you. We haven't even discussed diet.
if you can't be responsible with food and you can't be responsible with training, you can't be responsible with gear.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. The thing is, though, they don't want to hear that. And the thing is, they don't want to hear that. They're going to go to the next coach that will tell them down here take his money, which is fine by me because they're a liability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love this one, too. This is the greatest. Well, I've never taken growth before, but I heard growth is the reason why everybody's really big. I'm like, as you know, there's no drug that's going to make you a monster. It's just a part of the equation.
Yes.
And then they take it and they're like, I think my stuff's fake.
That's the best one. I think I got fake gear, and I think you got fake
12
training.
years,
That's really what it is.
In 12 years, I've never had an infection. The only thing bunk is you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think my stuff is underdosed. No, I just don't think you train hard enough, and I don't think you eat enough food. It doesn't make
Your
a difference
intensity
because
is underdosed.
right. It's like
You know what's really good topic to bring up quick is getting your hormones checked during contest prep. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? And I'll tell you my opinion.
I think for a neurotic person, it's a bad idea, and a hypochondriac, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm talking hormones. I'm talking not panel, just hormones.
Just the hormone panel?
I don't want them to know because then they're going to just spaz the fuck out.
Yes, this is a perfect example. So if I told a couple of my clients, don't do it. They do it, and they're like, my Arimidex is fake. My estrogen is like 700. I'm like, dude, it's tren. Tren is registering estrogen. That happens in blood work. Like, it's going to come up as false. Oh, dude, I was freaking out. And he's like up like 5 pounds. Or this happens where everything's clicking perfectly. I think I'm going to get my testosterone checked. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. Why? Yeah. I'm just letting you know, if your expectation is not where it wants to be, then you're going to start questioning your gear. Then you're going to start questioning everything. Then you're going to be like, well, maybe my cleanse fake. Maybe this is fake. And now you're going to get in your own head and you're going to sabotage your own prep. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, well, I thought my levels would at least be 4,700. Why are they only 2,800? Well, why is this? Why is my estrogen that low? It's like, dude, if it's working, why are you worrying about it?
Yes.
I always say that in Western medicine, they treat the blood work. In all civilizations except for the 20th century America, you treat the patient's symptoms. Mm-hmm. And if you have no symptoms, you don't investigate with blood work. And blood work is used to track down a problem, not to create problems.
But speaking of that, estrogen levels in the off season, right? Where people are like, "Oh, my estrogen levels need to be within normal limits." I'm like, "Your testosterone is 5,700. Do you really think that you have to be normal limits?" Well, if you have any signs or symptoms, I feel great. Then who cares? Right. Who freaking cares? Right. You getting gains? Yeah. Sex drive good? Yep. You getting good boners? Yep. No problem. Feel great. Then shut up. Then don't mess with it. If you mess with it, then it's gonna do something else.
The enemy of good is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time to take like an AI is if you're getting some of the side effects that go with estrogen climbing. If you're not getting those problems, why worry about it? Because it's not affecting you.
You don't take AI.
No. AIs are terrible. Yeah. It's just like people, they want to look good. I want to drop the water up my face to be puffy. Do you want to bodybuild? Or do you just want to look like, what do you want to do, dude? What do you want to do?
The problem is that they look at everybody and they're like, oh, these guys are shredded year round. No, they're not. No. And they try to look like that. No, these motherfuckers are shredded for like 4 weeks out of the year, and they take 1,000 pictures and they keep posting them all year long to make it look like
Correct. It brings up another point about
look like it year round.
Is when you get clients to be like, I don't understand why I'm not growing fast enough. Well, first off, if you're well experienced in training, you're not putting on 10 pounds of lean muscle every year. Not going to happen. No. So this is what happens. They see one guy who puts on 30 pounds of stage weight in a year, and they're like, well, everybody's doing it. That's one person, and that's probably going to happen once. It's not going to happen every year. And if it happens repetitively, that's a total individual genetic thing. The majority of people are not jumping weight classes every year. It's just not happening. No. So people have this false interpretation like, well, I want to put on 20 pounds of solid muscle by summer. That's not happening. You're looking at 3 to 5 pounds of stage weight per year in experienced lifter. Experienced, that's how it's going to be. Unless it's your first year, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The Hunter Labrada phenomenon. It's like you're a Hunter Labrada phenomenon. Your parents weren't Olympians. You're not filthy rich. And from the time you were 7, your job wasn't to become Mr. Olympia. Like you weren't grown in a fucking lab to be Mr. Olympia. So you're going to be Hunter Labrada.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, we've all had those good years when we grow really well. But I mean, that doesn't, like, I remember the first time I grew really well, I'm like, well, this way I'm going to be 300 pounds in August, No.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no.
It's like I'll be 42 on the first of the year. And last year, I put on about 5 to 8 pounds of stage weight from my previous, right?
That's pretty good. That's really good.
The hope is with me and Justin Compton this year, the hope was show up at a little over 210. So 210, 212, somewhere there. That would be four more pounds of stage weight if I showed up at 212. That's the hope. That may happen. That may not happen. I may get 215. I may come in diced out of my mind and still be the same weight, but still be bigger. They don't understand that the longer you train, the less weight you're going to gain. But it's going to look like a lot more on you because of muscle maturity, conditioning. You could be the same weight for 5 fucking years in a row and look bigger every single year because your conditioning and your muscle maturity is a lot better. You have gained muscle.
Muscles change. What's an example of that is you look at top cyclists, right? Dude, they're like 130 pounds, but their legs are gnarly. And it's not like they're gaining 5 pounds of muscle in their legs every year. It's just their muscles and their legs are changing. So it appears like they're jacked, but they're not actually jumping up weight in significance,
No, they're adapting to what the stress that's being put on them is what they're doing. And they're adapting to that stress and that's basically the same thing. I mean, muscle gain is just an adaptation to stress. That's all it is.
Right. 100%. 100%. Well, did we touch all the questions? Did we get them all?
Yeah,
you got all my questions. The only one I got left is somebody wanted to know, are you done competing at this point? Or are you still planning on competing in the future?
This is great. This is the first time I'm ever going to say this publicly. I'm no longer going to compete.
Okay. Perfect. We got it right here.
Yeah. I actually really want to get into boxing.
Okay.
I've always wanted to get into some type of combat sport, and because my knees are destroyed, I can box. I can't do MMA, but I can box. So I've been boxing 2 hours a week with a boxing coach. I have a little setup in my garage that I practice 3 days a week. Shadow boxing, running drills, the speed bag, double end bag. I used to order a reflex bag. And probably in 1 or 2 years, because they say about 2 years of training, then you'd be good for a fight. So I would like to try a fight. I really would. It's different.
Does that mean that you're dropping muscle mass right now too at the same time, trying to get a little bit more flexibility and stuff?
Yeah, so my training modified just to a push-pull legs, but just once per week. It doesn't revolve because of all the other training. So, and then obviously I'm going to be choosing barbell row, standing dumbbell row, standing overhead press, things a little more functional. Obviously, I'm still going to do my chest work, but I do a lot more rear delt work and upper back work just to compensate for the constant punching. Yeah. Because obviously the first 2 weeks of me repetitively punching, my shoulders were like, F you, So I had to try to that balance. But I mean, dude, it's amazed. Like when I first did it, I think it was around 248, 250 when I started boxing. Like, dude, I got my ass kicked so quickly. I'm like, Jesus, like I run out of steam so fast.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. And obviously little guys go all day long, And one of my friends, professional strongman, we got in a sparring match and he kicked me right in the face because it was like little mixed martial arts, little kickboxing, kneeing, stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that's different. It tastes blows the back of my throat. That's different. But no, it's fun. It's just different. I like the fact that it takes a lot more strategy in your mind because, boxing's a lot of strategy. It's altering your opponent's strategy, moving, blocking, combinations. So as I got older and my ability to be recover faster and all the injuries and ailments over the years aren't an issue anymore, Now it's like I can use my mind, time, and refine a skill to become better at something. Dude, I got to 265 this year, the biggest I've ever been, and I was really happy with working with Vu. Everything was wonderful. But, dude, my knees hurt constantly, every day, all day. And I have osteoarthritis in both my knees. And, like, I had to say to myself, do I want to keep pounding and destroying my knees to the point where they're really damaged? And I'm like, dude, it's not like I'm ever going to be a top open bodybuilder. So I'm like, I have to figure out and make a smart decision. I'm like, I'm just going to stop because at this rate, I've been bodybuilding 15 years. I'm very happy with what I was doing. I love helping my competitors, but I mean, it's time to try to do something new, you know?
Yeah. Well, obviously you've built yourself a nice business and stuff within the sport. It's, you've been able to utilize it to make a living and stuff off of it with your knowledge and and experience. So at this point, what else are you going to gain from competing that you already haven't gained financially,
Correct. Right. Yeah. And it's just like, it's just sometimes I want to do something different. I raced motocross my whole life, and then it was bodybuilding for 15 years. And now it's like, man, now that my knees are failing, maybe I should, because it was getting frustrating, dude. It's like every other week, it's like ice in my knees. And then and I'm able to do less and less every 6 months for legs. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But now I'm down to 238. My knees feel better. They don't feel great. But I have to do different things for box. I can't run. So I've been doing some modified uphill sprints. I've been doing jump rope, but on a mat. I do other full body cardio, kind of like a Navy SEAL workout where it's just like burpees, up downs, push-ups, medicine ball stuff. Sure. Where you're getting cardio workout in, but you're being mobile. Mm-hmm. That's not destroying my knees further.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the lighter you get, the better your knees are going to feel anyway. It's less stress and less strain on them just from the day to day from standing on them,
Yeah. I definitely don't want to lose too much weight,
Sure.
But he's like, I still like bodybuilding. That's the problem, Yeah. I still have a small grasp on it.
Yeah. No, I wish you luck with that. That sounds awesome. When I'm done, because my kids are little, they're going to want to be playing sports and stuff here in the next few years. So I've got like a 3 more year window, and then it's going to have to probably call it quits at some point too. And I'm hoping that both of my kids get into wrestling because I'd like to start wrestling again and be able to.
That's awesome.
Like that,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I wrestled for 14 years. And when I say for 14 years, it was year round for 14 years because it was wrestling with different organizations and stuff throughout the year. And then when I got into high school, it was high school wrestling, and then we'd wrestle all through the summer in
camp, right?
And stuff.
Camp and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I wrestled with USA Wrestling from the time I was little, and then the high school the season was in the winter time, and then USA Wrestling picked up in the spring when the high school wrestling season was over. So I would travel and go to nationals in Fargo, North Dakota, which wouldn't be till June. So it was pretty much year round because you would be off and you'd go to camps all year round, and then football season. And as soon as football season got over in November, wrestling practice started again for the school. So it was just a revolving door. I love it. I miss it. I still watch. I'll watch it on TV and stuff. I'll watch, I'll get on and watch wrestling. They've got a bunch of different channels and stuff. So when you say you wanted to do something different, I'd like to get back into doing that too. And it's more functional. Obviously, I'm going to have to lose weight to do it. I won't be able to be that big and do it anymore.
Wrestling's awesome. I love wrestling too, dude. I wrestled a little bit in high school, not a lot, but man, that was a blast. That was a blast. Good shit.
Yeah. So cool. Todd, you got any more questions?
We'd love to have you back.
Definitely, for sure.
Great guest, and there's going to be tons of questions we come up with in the next couple of days that we wish you would have asked you. So we'd love to. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love this stuff. I like talking about nutrition and getting good information out there. There's a lot of misinformation, and it's good to clarify and have us talk about, really what's going on instead of people speculating on the message boards, forums, and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, anytime.
All right, sounds good.
All right. So for Chris Tuttle and for Todd Lee, I'm Keith Aubrey saying this is the Weekly Grind Podcast, episode number 76, sponsored by Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com and Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel at kodiakbodybuilding.com. And we'll be back next week, episode 77, with John Jewett. Until then, see everybody later.